In previous episodes, we introduced the two poles of the world, the Antarctic and Arctic. In this episode, we're heading to the third pole of the world, Mount Everest. Located in the middle section of the Himalayas, the border of China and Nepal, Mount Everest has an average temperature of -20 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year. Mount Everest is the highest peak in the world, standing at an elevation of 29,032 feet. Due to the ongoing collision between the Indian plate and Eurasian plate, the entire Himalayan mountain range is still experiencing continuous uplift. Mount Everest is an awe-inspiring peak that symbolizes humanity's relentless pursuit of the limits of the natural world. It attracts attention and challenges countless brave individuals. Since 1921, people have been attempting to summit Everest, but faced multiple failures. It wasn't until 1953 when New Zealand mountaineer Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing Norgay successfully collaborated and became the first individuals to reach the summit of Mount Everest. Edmund Hillary was born in Auckland, New Zealand. From a young age, he had a keen interest in mountaineering and exploration. After the end of World War II, he dedicated more of his time and energy to mountaineering activities. In 1951, Hillary embarked on a mountaineering expedition and joined a team that went to the Himalayas in Nepal. It was during this expedition that he first encountered Mount Everest, and his experience deeply fueled his desire to climb this highest peak. Tenzing Norgay was born in the region near Mount Everest, and he had a childhood dream of summiting the mountain. In 1953, he was chosen as a guide for the British expedition. Their journey to the summit was filled with hardship and challenges. In April, the British team established their base camp at 17,600 feet on the south slope of Everest. As they climbed to an altitude of approximately 27,887 feet, they encountered a treacherous zone known as Hillary's Step, where the wind speeds were extremely high and weather conditions were harsh. Hillary and Norgay set up an emergency high camp in this area, waiting for a favorable weather window. On May 29th, with improved weather conditions, Hillary and Norgay made their summit attempt. They set off from the high camp and climbed the final steep ice slope. After 5 hours of strenuous efforts, they finally reached the summit, becoming the first humans to ever set foot on the peak of Mount Everest. Their summit achievement became a legendary story, inspiring countless climbers to pursue their own dreams. While climbing Everest carries significant risks, to date, over 4,800 people have successfully reached the summit, but unfortunately, more than 300 individuals have lost their lives during the ascent. Summiting Mount Everest is an incredibly challenging and dangerous task. The weather on Everest is extremely unpredictable, with sudden storms, high winds and frigid temperatures capable of occurring at any moment. The high altitude presents climbers with extreme lack of oxygen and thin air. The rugged terrain requires traversing glaciers, crevasse zones, with post-potential dangers such as ice falls, avalanches and crevices. Climbers also face steep rock faces, snow-covered slopes and difficult climbing conditions. In the eyes of mountaineers, Sherpa people are essential for mountaineering. The Sherpa people are an indigenous ethnic group in the Himalayan region. However, for many people outside Nepal, the term Sherpa has become a synonym for mountain guides, mostly young men. Sherpas are not only the labor force on mountaineering expeditions, carrying extra equipment such as oxygen cylinders, water, food, but they're also professional navigators. In temperatures ranging from -22 degrees Fahrenheit to -58 degrees Fahrenheit, they assist climbers in crossing ice falls, avalanches, and high altitudes. From Camp 4 to the summit, climbers enter an extremely dangerous zone. In the stretch above 26,246 feet, the majority of climbers heavily rely on supplemental oxygen. Sherpas must ensure that their clients have enough oxygen supply for the descent as well. If faced with extreme weather conditions, they would make strategic decisions regarding whether to continue the ascent or descent in order to avoid any worsening situations in the mountains. Kami Rita, a Sherpa, holds the world record for the most numbers of successful summit of Mount Everest. As of 2021, he has reached the summit of Everest 25 times. Kami started accompanying his eldest on mountaineering expeditions to earn extra income when he was only 10 years old. At the age of 22, he began working as a kitchen porter at the base camp, while his brother Lakpa worked as a guide for Everest climbers. Over the next 2 years, under his brother's training, Kami adopted the high altitudes and treacherous climbing routes, and at the age of 24, he had his first attempt to reach the summit. Kami has said, "I always try my best to ensure that every client successfully reaches the summit, but my bottom line is when I realize any client cannot continue, I will give up the mission." A 30-year-old climber, exhausted and struggling, returned to Camp 3 on Mount Everest at 23,500 feet. She had never climbed such a high altitude before. From the very beginning, Kami noticed that reaching the summit would be extremely difficult for this client. It took her 19 hours to hike from Everest Base Camp to Camp 2, twice the expected time. When she finally arrived, Kami believed that she was not adequately prepared for the summit and made the decision to have her airlifted. A few days later, this client rejoined the group and set off from the Everest Base Camp. Initially, things went smoothly, but at 19,685 feet, she became heavily reliant on supplemental oxygen, which is typically reserved for altitudes above 22,965 feet. By the time they reached Camp 3, Kami made a determined decision to escort his client back to the safe area down the mountain, as the risks for her were too big. Kami says, "If you notice something isn't right, going down is always the best decision, because as long as you survive, Mount Everest will always be here waiting for you." In recent years, standardized and commercialized mountaineering companies have provided comprehensive services and support for climbing Mount Everest. However, climbing massive peaks like Mount Everest can be extremely dangerous. At an altitude of 23,500 feet, the climate is harsh. The summit experiences hurricane-force winds, with the temperature dropping as low as -99 degrees Fahrenheit. The oxygen levels are 1/3 of those at the sea level, and helicopters and GPS devices are limited in such conditions. Even the strongest Sherpas cannot carry someone who has lost their ability to function down the mountain. Despite the gradual maturation of the commercial mountaineering system, the increasing number of climbers pushing new records has made Mount Everest overly crowded. In 2019, a shocking traffic jam incident occurred at the summit of Everest, which was one of the deadliest mountaineering disasters in history, with over a dozen people losing their lives at the southern side of the mountain. At the time, climbers had to queue for 3 hours at the Hillary Steep, located at an altitude of 28,839 feet. According to the eyewitness accounts, there were approximately 200 climbers stuck at the location that day. The Hillary Steep is located approximately 39.37 feet below the summit of Mount Everest. It is a nearly vertical rock wall situated halfway between the South Col and the summit, and it is the final significant challenge on the southeastern road to the summit. It is considered a true dead zone. Due to the long waiting times, excessive physical exhaustion, extreme cold, and lack of oxygen, 3 hours can be a matter of life or death. Climbing Mount Everest is extremely dangerous, so why do so many people still attempt to do it? Different countries' mountaineering teams climb Mount Everest for honor. Research teams do it for scientific purposes. Expedition teams are driven by a mix of curiosity and commercial reasons. And Nepal Sherpa people climb to sustain their families and also for economic livelihood. As for ordinary climbers, they may simply be pursuing a dream and seeking personal validation. In 1975, Junko Tabei from Japan became the first woman to successfully summit Mount Everest. Another notable female climber who reached the summit of Everest is Lydia Brady. She was the first woman to climb Everest without supplemental oxygen. Their achievements have demonstrated to the world that this traditionally male-dominated activity is not exclusive to men. The optimal climbing season for Mount Everest is in May, and winter ascents are rare. Due to unexpected weather conditions and freezing temperatures, people tend to avoid climbing during this season. However, in 1980, 2 climbers from Poland defeated extreme conditions and societal criticism to summit Mount Everest in winter. Many believed they would fail, but with a strong team spirit and unwavering determination, they successfully reached the summit and returned to tell the tale. To climb Mount Everest, apart from physical health, one needs to acquire multiple skills. From conquering Mount Everest to understanding and protecting it, the ultimate goal of visiting the top of the world time and time again is to be able to safeguard it more efficiently. Mount Everest, like North and South Poles, possess a unique ecological structure, making the ecological changes in these regions a litmus test for global environmental changes. Scientists study the ecological environment of Everest, changes in the vegetation distribution, glacier morphology, scale, and volume to provide important references for the global ecological and climatic change research. In such a complex environment, in addition to conducting research in various fields, scientists who climb Mount Everest also engage in measuring the height. The first measurements of the height of Mount Everest was conducted in 1852 by a geographical survey team from India. They used the method of triangulation, measuring the angles and the distance between Mount Everest and nearby peaks to calculate the height. However, these measurements were only preliminary estimate and not accurate. Later, with advancements in technology, the British geographer Sir George Everest employed the method of triangulation to conduct a more precise measurement of Mount Everest. This endeavor took several years to complete. Ultimately, the height of the Mount Everest was determined to be 29,029 feet. The measurement of Mount Everest's height can indeed reveal the strength and the variation of the tectonic plate movements, which is highly beneficial for monitoring seismic activity and disaster prevention. Mount Everest is situated in the Himalayas, one of the most active tectonic plate boundaries on Earth. By regularly measuring the height of Mount Everest, scientists can observe the deformation of the Earth's crust caused by the plate movements. This information is valuable for understanding the dynamic of the region and improving our ability to migrate and prepare for earthquakes and other natural disasters. Although the summit of Mount Everest is not suitable for any kind of plant or animal life, the vast altitude range of the northern slopes of Himalayas provide excellent habitats for a variety of flora and fauna. The Everest region is known for its rich biodiversity, harboring numerous unique alpine plant species and rare animal species such as snow leopards and Tibetan antelopes. Despite the harsh conditions, these species have adapted to the extreme environment and high mountains, and they contribute to ecological diversity of the region. Gama Valley is a mountain valley located near the northern slopes of Mount Everest in Tibet Autonomous Region of China. It is formed by the erosion of the snow-fed rivers and featured rugged terrain. The valley has a high altitude range, ranging from over 2,000 meters to over 5,000 meters. Much of area is covered by glaciers and alpine meadows. The area boasts stunning scenery, abundant alpine vegetation, and rich wildlife resources, making it a paradise for hikers. Gama Valley is home to 2,550 species of higher plants and 509 species of animals, making it one of the most biodiverse regions of Tibet. It is a highly valuable natural heritage site. From the discovery of Mount Everest to the summit of the peak, it has been a long journey. During this time, some people realized their dreams, while others left with regrets. Some say that reaching the summit of Everest is conquering the mountain, but it is more accurate to say that Mount Everest embraces us. In these 3 polar expeditions, we have explored the magical world and witnessed the success of adventures and have been moved by the strong will and enduring perseverance. If you did like this video, make sure to comment on it or give it a like. And also don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We're gonna make new episodes for you, so see you soon!